The question is, are you ready? I'm so excited. Today is the start of this edition of Retirement Plan Live with our subject for this case study, this retirement case study, Sam. And today we get to start the first step. I'm excited. My name is Roger Whitney. I am the host of the Retirement Answer Man show, where we are dedicated to helping you not just survive retirement. Hey, we want you to thrive in retirement. Today we start with step 1. Dreaming up your ideal retirement. I so love doing these retirement plan lives. And from all the feedback, these are your favorite segments as well. So I'm glad that we started doing them twice a year. Now, if you are new to the show, what we got going on here starting today is a live case study with, this time, Sam, who is a listener. She is a single lady, so this is a single person edition. And what we're going to do is today we're going to listen to Sam as she and I discuss what her ideal retirement is going to look like. And then over the coming weeks, we're going to start diving into her financial resources, her worries about retirement, and the things that she wants to make sure that we manage. All of this culminating in a live results webinar. And I think we have the date. It's going to be June 7th, where if you're watching live on the webinar, you're going to hear Sam and I, and you're going to watch us walk through the analysis to see if she can achieve her ideal retirement. And if not, negotiate what she might be able to do. That's pretty cool, huh? So today we're going to start off with ideal retirement. Now you will have the chance to plan along with Sam. Before we listen to Sam's ideal retirement, we're going to talk about how you can start to define what your own is. Now, before we get going, I want to remind you, each week you're going to get resources in our 6-Shot Saturday email to help you through the process. And that's the only way you're going to be able to register for the live results webinar. So if you're not signed up for 6-Shot Saturday, go to rogerwhitney.com. And if you scroll down a little bit, there's a sign up for 6-Shot Saturday. And that will allow you to get the weekly emails that's going to have links to all the resources for you to plan along with Sam and get a summary of all the stuff that she's doing. So important to do that if you really want to dive into this. But we can't do any of that until we have that all important disclaimer. Boom, 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 boom. Hey, time for that all-important disclaimer, and it's real simple here. Just don't take advice from me on this show anyway. I only give advice to clients I work for as a fiduciary. This is all helpful hints and education. I can't give you any advice. I don't know anything about you. You're looking for an advisor? I'd be happy to have a fit meeting and see if we're a fit. But until then, make sure you talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor, because that's just common sense. Now, let's go talk about some tips on how you can dream up your ideal retirement. So in the news today, too many people are sacrificing their retirement because they're trapped by either what they've created throughout their life, or they're so worried about the future that they steal away the only life they have in retirement, especially in the early times. So how do you deal with this retirement dilemma? On one end, we want to live well today, right? Early in retirement, when we are healthier, we're more physically able to do things, we have more energy, but we're either in some ways trapped by all the little decisions we've made along the way in terms of the life that we built for ourselves, and we're also trapped by the worry about the future. How do we balance between those two things? Especially when that worry of the future isn't just about, markets and everything else, but it feels vulnerable sometimes when we retire because we're no longer earning an income and we feel like all the growth in our life has stopped, which makes us feel vulnerable. That can be one of those things that even if intellectually you get it, it can be hard to overcome. A recent listener, Terry, summarized this well. He says he and his wife are about 2 years from retirement and have been very fortunate to have made a very good living and save enough money for retirement. And they say on one hand, they should be happy we're millionaires, they say. But he says, I can't help worrying because I see myself having trouble spending money once I leave my job. Even now, we are always looking for deals to go out and eat, and I'm afraid that my fear of spending money is going to get even worse once I leave my job. That's a very insightful comment that, Terry identifies, hey, and it's not about being frugal. We all need to be good stewards of all the money that we have. I think he's talking about it in more negative context of being afraid to spend money now because he's getting close to retirement. He's like, man, when I lose my job, or not lose my job, when I retire and I don't have this income coming in and I don't have pay raises and bonuses and benefits and whatever else, and I've stopped saving, well, for some people, it's really hard just to stop saving. That feels bad. And then to not only not save, but be spending money without any money coming in, that can be difficult for us. And what happens is a lot of times, and Terry pinned it here, is we start really battening down the hatches because we're worried about a storm that may never come. And we're battening down the hatches right when we're the most energetic, the most healthy, and ready to live a life of freedom. And many times what I see is that sets in. And then when we get into our 70s and 80s, we realize, man, I'm going to have more than enough money, but I'm not healthy enough. I'm not energetic enough to go do all the things I wish I would have done in my 60s. So that's the dilemma. So Terry really hit on that. And then factor in what we're dealing with here in this series of Retirement Plan Live, which is a single person, right? So now if you had, well, it's only one person that's dealing with all this, not two. What are some of the wrinkles that come into that when we're dreaming about our future, right? Well, there's the additional worry of, man, I don't have that foxhole buddy next to me that's in it with me 100%, and we're trying to figure this out together, right? So who's going to care with me if I break my leg? Who's going to drive me home from the hospital? Who am I going to eat with, right? Who am I going to go see a movie with? Who's going to help care for me if I get older and I need it, right? Well, if you're a single person, that's a harder question to answer. If I really need to increase income through part-time work, who's going to help me? I think one of the stories we heard last week was, it's like you're in a rowboat and you're the only one rowing. When you get tired or you get injured, who's going to help you row the boat, whether it's from an income perspective or caring for each other, right? That's a lot of what having a marriage, a good marriage, really helps with. And then you have one that is a little bit more subtle of helping make decisions, whether it's about where to live, what you're spending, whether you're spending enough, whether this is a good purchase or a bad purchase, whether it makes sense to get more conservative or more aggressive. You have the absence of that partner to help you make decisions. Not that a single person can't make great decisions. That's not the point. I think of my life and in my planning, I'm blessed to have a great team. I got Nicole, I got Phil, I got Lorna to help me check my thinking to make sure I'm not missing something from a blind spot, but also to check my thinking of some maybe faulty premises that I didn't consider or some fault in my logic when I'm making decisions. When I'm working with clients, that's a big benefit of, hey, look at this. Am I missing something here or what am I doing wrong? Check my math. Check my analysis. Well, when you're single, you don't have that person that you're sitting with next to the table to sort of bounce an idea off of. It's easy to find someone, whether it's an advisor or a friend or an acquaintance, but you don't, unless you're really intentional about putting the right people in your life, their analysis may, if they're not good thinkers to begin with, or they have some ulterior motive, well, that doesn't help you very much. So that's another wrinkle. But anyway, wow, I'm getting depressing here. Let's get back to idea. It's about ideal retirement, right? Come on. So those are that's the dilemma that we're facing. And what I say all the time is that dilemma that is known, but just, whether it's acknowledged verbally or just a big hum under the surface can cause us to make sacrifices early in retirement that we don't necessarily have to make on the mantle of being reasonable or prudent. And I get that. We got to be reasonable or prudent, but I see a lot of times people do it too much. And that's scary because then we miss the only life we have. Okay, so let's talk about how do we deal with this dilemma. And we're going to demonstrate in this case study over the next 3 to 4 weeks, one process, a more agile process to deal with this so we can try to find balance between those two competing interests. So what are some tips for you to get to ideal? And by the way, if you're signed up for 6 Shots Saturday, you're going to get some resources. You're going to get an estimating retirement expenses resource, a worksheet to help you walk through identifying the needs, the wants, and the wishes. And you're going to get a lifestyle design worksheet that will help you dream up this ideal retirement so you can get to it. So what are some tips? Tip number 1 is don't be trapped by what your life is right now. So what do I mean by that? Well, you've built this life, you've built a network, you've built a community, you've built a home, you built all this stuff to support your life as it is. And part of that was through most likely building a family or because of where you are from a work perspective, determine where you live, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the life that you've built has been for the season of your life, of your working life. When you retire, you go through a major change. It's a whole new season of life, much like going from high school to college or college to your career. Remember when you left for college, you were starting over on everything. You had a clean slate to determine what college you went to, what you studied, where you lived, who you associated with, what your activities were. That was a period of major change. And the same thing happened when you graduate college, right? You maybe move across country for a job, you set up house, and then you slowly build whatever you build, maybe for decades. So when you're transitioning to retirement, it's the same kind of change. And what can happen is you can get trapped by the world that you've created. Not that it's a bad world, but you can get trapped of maybe I make little adjustments to this world. And you'll see in our planning, I don't go real deep into what has happened in the past with Sam. Not that it's not important, but if I start going into the past, whether it's her allocation, investment allocation, or anything else, now that sort of defines the problem that we're dealing with. And then it becomes a game in inches. So portfolio is a good example there. If someone gives me their portfolio and I do this analysis and I come back with some recommendations or suggestions, I've already defined what I'm dealing with because now it's a game of inches because they've already given me the framework and I'm just making suggestions. What I prefer to do is just look at the assets, the amount of assets, and build what it should be in an ideal scenario, and then go back and look at what is and figure out how we reconcile that in some way. That allows me not to have some built-in biases or assumptions and just try to work to the best solution. So when you're thinking about your life, and you're dreaming up this ideal retirement, what I want you to do is everything should be on the table. I have a client right now where she lives in a city because of where she works. And that's the only reason she lives there. So she's in the middle of exploring the entire country of where she would like this next season of her life to be. Doesn't mean you have to blow it all up, but definitely put it on the table. So how do you do that? Because that can be really hard. So here's one exercise you can do. You can get a blank sheet of paper. Maybe I'll do a YouTube video on this. Hey, by the way, go subscribe to our YouTube channel where we're answering a lot of your questions so you can actually look at me, not even just listen to me. Anyway, okay. Get a blank sheet of paper and draw a line down the middle of it and then across so you create 4 quadrants, okay? And then in the top quadrant, put down environment. In the right quadrant, put down relationships. In the bottom quadrant, bottom left, put down hobbies or activities. And in the bottom right, put health. And then what I want you to do is say, okay, in an ideal world, what do I want each of these quadrants to look like? And just brainstorm. So environment might be peaceful, warm, vibrant, artistic, inexpensive, close to family, near a bike trail. Yeah. Brainstorm as many ideas as you can get and think from the phase of, or from the viewpoint of when I retire, So that may be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. When I retire, this is what I want my environment to be like. This is what I want my relationships to look like. This is what I want my hobbies and interests to be. This is what I want my health to look like. And brainstorm as many ideas you can. And so that's your ideal that you're running towards for when you get to have a life of freedom. And that's a good way to start from, don't think about what you have. Think about what would be just perfect in that first year of retirement in all of these different quadrants. And that can really be a good first exercise. Now, the next tip is I want you to think big when you start to put some meat to what this retirement is going to look like. Now, in the worksheets, you'll have a framework for it, but I like to focus on, okay, we do have to put some numbers to this from a spending standpoint, right? And I want you to put numbers to it, but I don't want you to dwell on the numbers too much unless you're really, really, really close. Then you want to dial it in. But if you're a few years away, swag it. A sophisticatedly wild, awesome guess. So start off with your basic needs. What is the basic lifestyle that I want to live? Housing costs, normal groceries, normal entertainment, just normal travel, just that baseline spending. And in my book, Rock Retirement, I talk about it as that's the noodles of the pasta. Okay, it's like a dish of spaghetti. And the noodles is that baseline needs just to live your life. It'd be a happy life, but it's not going to be spicy. All right. And the worksheet that's included in Six Shot Saturday will help you with that. And then the next line is your wants. This is the sauce of this spaghetti dish. This is going to add some spice and add some flavor to it. So that could be extraordinary travel. It could be gifting. It could be buying that awesome bicycle, whatever floats your boat. I've seen almost everything. And then you want to put on the Parmesan and the spices on this plate of spaghetti. And you want to talk about what are those aspirational things that you sort of tease yourself about wanting, and you giggle at yourself because you put them down. I want you to put them down. I want you to start off not being reasonable about what you can afford, what you're comfortable with. If you have a desire to have a sports car, a lake house, gifting to your kids, gifting to your church, whatever it is, put it down. There will be time to be reasonable later on. If you do this exercise right and you dream big enough, when you get to the analysis part, it's not going to be possible. And you know what? That's good, because by getting it on paper and letting all those things that maybe you haven't spoken about very often, letting them marinate in your mind or as a family, you'll start to realize which ones are really important and which ones aren't as important. And that will be important to us later on, because then we can negotiate and prioritize. So these are some tips on how you should goal set for retirement. I think it's a little bit different than normal. And I think this is the best first step in a agile process to making the most of the only life you have. So sign up for Six Shot Saturday. You can get those resources. I would love for you to email me ideas. If you want to share your goals with me, I would love to see them. I think we can get ideas from each other. So feel free to do that. There's ways you can do that at rogerwhitney.com so we can start to have this conversation together. But for now, let's go meet Sam and let's see what she dreams about. All right, so we are on step one. Here, let's listen in to Sam and I as she dreams up her ideal retirement. All right, Sam, let's define what we're trying to hit from a lifestyle standpoint. And this is important, right? Because you're working now, making great money. It's easy not to pay attention. So my only counsel to you, probably not my only, because I can't help myself. My big counsel to you is let's not be too reasonable right now. Okay? We'll get to that. And I know you've listened to some of the other case studies. So, and the concept of let's shoot for ideal right now. And the way I would like to do it, and we may have to get more information from you if you haven't dialed it in as well as you would like, is I want to divide it between those basic needs, what Sam needs to live her life. So obviously that's going to be housing, groceries, all those other things, but I also include in there just normal travel and normal entertainment, you know, what normal is. So in your mind, do you have a number for what, okay, this is what it costs from just a basic need standpoint to live the life of Sam?
Yeah, I've looked at it a couple of different times and it usually comes up pretty close to the same number when I run all of my budgetary numbers.
Okay.
And that's typically without extravagant travel or anything, around 60,000 a year.
Okay. Around 60,000 a year, which is a good number. I'm guessing because you said you had some analysis done before, that you've thought about this before, and you are the one that does all this now because you've delegated it to yourself. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing that you have that dialed in. Now, when would you want to retire in an ideal scenario? And I think I know the answer, but you have to say it.
I think it would have been last year.
I don't know if I can put that into my analysis. Last year.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, that number that I gave you now, and I'll tell you the big stumbling block for me is medical insurance. I have a really good healthcare plan where I'm employed now. And when I had randomly in my mind decided that when I was 59 and a half, I was going to retire. And that seemed sort of far away when I started thinking about that. And then it got closer, and that would have been this past February. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get serious about this. And around the holidays, I was looking at my numbers a lot and looked at my financial plan. And then I looked at medical insurance. And I said, that's not going to work. When I figured it out, and it was very informal. I didn't actually sign up, and I've really benefited from the various podcasts that you've done on that. You know, it's helped me to think a lot more about that and hear other people's experience. But when I looked at it, I realized it was just cost prohibitive under my current expenditure plan, because it was going to run me, I figured, around $16,000 a year. And that was, like not the best plan, but not the worst plan. No subsidies at all for that under the ACA. And that was the only program I looked at, was the ACA.
Okay.
So.
And you based it off of your current income, I assume, right?
I did. Yeah. And yes, because I couldn't predict, I've tried to sort of segue my way into a pre-retirement situation and in my current employment. But, looking at that money, I panicked when I saw $16,000 a year, and I thought, I can't do that. So, and I know I lost the train of thought, whatever it was you were asking.
No, you're right on the train. You are right on the train.
Okay.
To mix metaphors, it's like, and I imagine some of it too, is you see the cost and like, wow, if I pull this ripcord and I jump out of the plane, mm-hmm. I can't really get back into it very easily.
No. And then you're not putting any money in, and you're just taking extreme amounts out. And then that's when I found myself having the conversation of, well, what am I willing to give up in order to retire? And I just thought, that's too complicated. So I've just kept working.
Okay. So we're going to factor in healthcare, and that 16 number is a good number. So we have 60,000, and of course we're talking after tax numbers. So that's real spending money. And then, this, but just so everybody hears it, we're going to use an inflation number. I think we're using 4.01%. So when we say 60,000 a year, each year that number goes up by that 4.01%, which is just CPI since 1970. Seems high right now, but other times it seemed low. So it just works out. And then with health care costs, we use a 6.5% inflation rate. So we'll factor in some health care before Medicare costs. Mm-hmm. And then maybe we can talk about some of those options. Some of that gets real personal and customized, right? Because you have those health share programs, and then ACA, you may get the subsidies depending on where your assets are. And we haven't really got into that yet. Now I have a question for you. And I know what you do. You have a very high pressure job.
Yep.
And when you think of retirement, is it running from, these hours, this cycle just kills me? Is that a lot of what drives it?
Yeah, that's a large part of it. But I also have a lot of things I want to do. I've got a lot of interest, and I've made huge lists. Here's the things I'll do in retirement. And it's a lot of things that are interesting to me, and not the least of which is to spend time with my parents. They're both elderly, and that is a ticking clock. You don't know when that will end. But I have a lot of friends and avocations, things I'm really interested in doing, and things I used to do and I don't have time for anymore. And I just feel like I'm missing out on a lot of the fun things in my life. I'm just treading water, trying to keep my head above and figure out, can I retire and enjoy some of these things, or do I have to keep on the treadmill?
Just because the work schedule is so much.
The work schedule is a lot, and the stress of it, I just feel like health-wise, that takes a big toll on me also. And I just don't feel as good as I know that I could, and I don't enjoy life as much as I could.
I will tell you from my wife quitting her job, because she's about a month and a half in now.
Mm-hmm.
I think what is stress release? Is it cortisol? Something like that. But it's an amazing change in her energy level, her contentness. That's the word. If I'm saying that correctly. I feel like she's all there because she had a profession very similar to yours that was thousands of emails in the inbox, just countless meetings. Everything's a crisis type of thing. So I get what you're saying. Now, I have a question. Would you be willing to share your list if I sanitize it a little bit? If not, that's okay.
Yeah. I have it on a giant piece of tag board.
Do you really?
This web of, here's in different categories. Here's the things I want to do. I was just really brainstorming, things that I've done in the past and want to get back to, and things that I've never tried but I want to do, or things that I'm dabbling in now but not doing to the full extent. And so
you have like a vision board.
I do.
That I know. I can think of one client right now that's probably listening to this who has a vision board, and he always, when we're talking, he's always holding it up and showing me.
Yeah. So I can pull it out. I have it stashed behind the couch so that it doesn't distract me too much. But yeah, I can pull it out.
Yeah, if you're willing. If not, that's okay. I understand. Okay, so we have lifestyle, we have healthcare. Now let's get into, that's like the base of the pasta, right? Now let's get to the sauce and the wants.
Sure.
So what are some of the spice of life that we want to make sure we factor in here?
Well, this isn't necessarily a want, but it's something that it's a necessity, I guess, partially. I have some improvements that I would like to do to my home.
Okay.
I've done recently, about a year and a half ago, I did a bunch of interior things, sort of with the anticipation of retirement. And so I got those things knocked out, but those are the things you can enjoy. So I ignored the more boring things. Primarily, I need a new roof and stucco. And those are two large expenditures that I've been dancing around getting into. And I know I'm going to have to do that. I intend to live in this house indefinitely, and those things are going to go.
Okay. So roof and stucco, do you have a guesstimate?
Not a good one. I do on the roof because I actually had someone come. That's going to be about $15,000. And the stucco, I don't know. I need to do more investigation on how much. I have quite a lot of stucco. I have a courtyard and some walls and the house, so.
Usually I can guesstimate pretty well, but I have no clue.
I know.
How much?
And I actually thought about doing that before we started this, and I just didn't get around to it.
So I'm thinking more than a roof. They strip it off, right? And then they reapply it and then paint it?
I don't know. If I had to guess, I would say $30,000, but I don't know that.
Okay. Well, we're just going to put that in there for now because we're thinking big.
Okay.
And is the goal to do that while you're working, ideally, but if you can retire tomorrow.
And do it from, I'd like to do that.
Okay.
Retire and be here to supervise them while they're doing it.
I don't know if I can call that spice. That doesn't sound very fun. You're right.
Yeah, no, it's not. But no, I have more fun things than that. Okay. It's just that those are two looming large expenses that I wanted to be sure to put out there.
Okay.
But from a fun perspective, I do like to travel, and I'm good with short-term local vacations, but I like to do adventures. And so I have traveled some to Europe, and I would like to go back. I've been in South America. I just have, and I feel this goes back to my comment about getting older and not enjoying life. My ability to do that kind of travel is going to diminish. It's just hard when you're lifting your suitcase up a bunch of stairs in Italian villa. You can't do that forever, so I want to be able to do some of those things now while I still can.
Okay, so let's say from the day you retire, let's break it up into two different travel. Let's say domestic adventure. We don't even call it travel. Domestic adventure, international adventure.
Sure.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So let's do an annual budget for each. That budget can be all over the place. I'm guessing you're not on the hostel end, and you're probably not on the Ritz-Carlton end.
Yeah.
So what would be, let's start with international. What would be an annual adventure budget for international?
Well, in the past, I've allocated $5,000 a year. That's been sort of my number. And I don't go every year, but then that way I figure if I have that, it accumulates. And if it's a year when it's a big trip, maybe I have $10,000 and I could stay longer.
Okay. So that's for international. which isn't that much. In fact, as you know, we were talking, I'm going to Mongolia, and the gentleman I'm going with, it's always good to travel with people like these because he is from India. He's been all over the world, and he could have been a travel agent in his prior life. Nice. He's the one. I'm just show up and okay, we're going. But he said when he travels internationally a lot, he says about 5,000 to 6,000.
Yeah, for how long?
For a couple of weeks.
Okay, well,
usually
that's
it's the
good.
Getting there that's the most expensive part, right? And depending on where you stay, then that can run the gamut. Okay, so we'll say you said 5,000 a year, so I'm going to say 6,000 a year, just because this is ideal at the moment. What about domestic travel? Do you like to go around the U.S.?
I do, and of course, those are a lot more affordable. I do like to do cycling trips, and I like
like you already.
Yeah, I like some of those kind of things, but I'm also happy jumping in the car, driving around and exploring and staying at more budget-minded kinds of places. So I guess if for domestic travel, I would think $1,000 a year.
Now you realize you're not going to be working.
Right.
So
yeah, believe me, I've been over that in my head. Then you're not working, you got a lot more time, but you don't have the money to spend. It's kind of
I'm saying you got a lot more time, right? I think that 1,000 could be, not that many trips.
Yeah, that's true. So are you suggesting a number?
Well, I'm just prodding.
Yeah.
To see if you're...
Well, if we're thinking big, then let's do a bigger number. Let's say $2,000.
Okay. There's time to negotiate later. I'm the yes man right now. Enjoy me while I'm the yes man. Yeah. I'll be the no man later. Probably.
Make my dreams come true, right?
And then, so if we say you want 6,000 for international travel, to your point earlier, a lot of times people just say we want that and that's part of our retirement budget, but really that's a season of your retirement.
It is.
Right. Now, I have clients in their 70s. They're still in that season. Where do you see yourself from that perspective? Do we want to put an end to this season at some point?
Well, yeah. And I come from a long line of people that live a long time. And tend to be pretty healthy through that time. So I'm hoping that I'll still be in my 70s and be able to do maybe not, the extreme overseas kind of travel, but pretty active in that time.
So why don't we say age 80?
Okay.
Is that reasonable?
Yeah, sure.
I forgot to, in fact, you reminded me because when we say you're going to retire ASAP, I usually use the age of 92 as sort of the end date.
That's kind of what I've been looking at.
You're comfortable with that? And
end of plan, as they say.
End of plan.
The euphemism for you're done.
Yeah. But we'll test for longevity, so that's okay. Okay, so we got international travel, we got domestic travel. What else? Well, from a legacy standpoint, I would love to be able to give both my daughters some money. And the reason I say that is because I've been the happy beneficiary of some money when people in my family have passed away. So I would love to be able to leave them with some of that too. It's that balance of I don't want to leave more for them than I spent while I was alive kind of deal. But just as a random number, even $100,000 to each of them would be great. Okay. So we'll put that in there. Okay. Until we get to the world of driverless cars, you'll probably need a car periodically. So tell me about your car habits. Yeah. Well, I had a chain of going through a bunch of cars that I didn't like, but now I have a car I really like, and it's only a couple of years old. And I'm not one to really change cars frequently. So I'm thinking, every 5 to 7 years is plenty for me. And what is this dream car that you have? Oh, it's nothing special. It's a Mazda, but it's an SUV. And I messed around with smaller cars and whatever. And then I found that for my lifestyle, I need to be able to haul stuff. I want to put my bike in there. I'm constantly helping people move things, my kids, and, so it was just nice to have that room for that. Just as an aside, what kind of bicycle do you have? I have a mountain bike and I have a road bike, actually. That's it. Now I know you're a real cyclist because that's always, well, which one? Right? Yeah. Yeah. I have a beautiful Bianchi road bike, and that's the one I really ride a lot. But I do mountain bike. It's part of the geography of where I live. Yeah. So. Okay. So every 7 years, and how much was your Mazda? I think it was around 30,000 maybe. Okay. We'll say 30,000. We'll put inflation numbers on here. And again, we'll get all this dialed in as best we can. I don't want to get bogged down in the details right now. So you have your basic, you have the car, you have the healthcare, you have home improvements, the fun one, then you have international travel, domestic travel, and a legacy. Any other things?
I feel like there was something else that I was thinking of, but it's not jumping out at me. I have a specific domestic travel trip that I want to do with my daughters. I've always been fascinated and wanted to go to see the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and then stay in New York City and see the store windows and do that. So that's kind of a special, and I'd like to be able to pay for them to do that trip. So that, I have no idea how much that would cost, but that is something I'd like to do.
Oh, let me guesstimate on that one. 3 people, air, hotel for how long? Week?
Probably about a week, yeah.
Let's go. 10,000?
It could be that much.
When you're staying downtown and you're doing shows and...
Yeah, shopping and doing all that stuff.
We'll say 10,000. When would you do that?
When would we do that? Well, I should be doing that this year. So, one of my daughters is married and I probably will be a grandmother in the next few years. And that's another reason I want to be retired or have more time, is so that I can, she lives here. So
okay, that was going to be my next question, because I think I heard you say you want to stay where you're at.
Yep, okay. I do. Okay. And my other daughter, I would like to give her money for a wedding. Not that it's impending. She's not engaged, but she does date a very nice young man that she's dated for a while. And
now, you just said that for the record, by the way, that he's a very nice young man. You just said that for the record, so.
I did, yeah. Okay. And so is my son-in-law. He's great too. So, I've really lucked out. But I did give my older daughter some money when she got married, and I'd like to match that for my younger daughter as well.
And can I ask how much that is?
Yeah, I gave her $15,000.
15. Okay. And then let's put a placeholder from a year, 2021.
Oh, I think it'll be before that. I bet it'll be in the next couple of years. Okay. For the younger daughters. Yeah.
2020. How about that?
Okay. Sure.
That's 2 years from now.
Yep.
Okay.
That sounds reasonable. We want to
make sure we get that in there. Anything else you can think of? Remember, I'm the yes man right now. This is the time.
Yeah. I know. I was thinking about things like hot tubs and boats, and I've got my fancy bicycles, and I've done the improvements in my house. The one thing I didn't think about was a dishwasher, but that's a fairly minor thing. I did get new appliances, and happily my parents are pretty well set, so I don't anticipate any expenses for their care per se. Okay. But I do like to be in a position to, do nice things for people in my family when I can, if they need help,
So what we're going to do from here is I will get this summarized, and we just sort of dreamed up, hey, if we could do this, that would be sort of cool. I think with 60,000 as a lifestyle budget, we probably won't do the go, slow go, no go years, because that's a reasonable amount. Not a lot to tear down from there, most likely. So as I've hinted about and probably said straight up, we're trying to dream here. The yes man, when we get to the analysis on the live webinar, it may be we can't do any of this.
Yeah.
And then I always have to make sure I set this up correctly, because that can be really sad. It's like giving someone all the candy in the world and then yanking it away from them, right? If we can't achieve all of it, that's no big deal. Then that's actually a good thing. It means you dream big enough, and then we can start to prioritize, because it's not just what do I keep or what don't I keep. There's other levers we can pull to try to achieve, and it's a matter of which ones are most important to you. I'm always amazed that 2 or 3 people that look identical on paper, when they go through the negotiation to get to what they're willing to do and what they're willing to give away, or and what they want to keep, they have very different solutions because they're different people, right? And that's why it needs to be about you. So that's what we're going to do. So next week on the show, we get down to, okay, what income resources do we have? And then we'll build a net worth statement so we can get an idea of what financial resources we have and where monies are going, because that's going to be a big part of, putting this all together. Sound good?
That's never as much fun as the parts that we just did today.
We'll make it fun. I promise. We'll make it fun. I promise.
That's the reality check time.
No, we'll make it fun.
Okay, right? That sounds great.
Hey, welcome to the Happy Lab, where we noodle on how to be a little happier. And one thing that makes me happier is when I'm talking to my sidekick, Nicole. Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Roger.
So, retirement planning can be crazy boring and intimidating, And that's one of the cool things about dreaming up your ideal retirement. What's one of the number one responses we get when people start to lean forward in thinking about their future?
So I hear from clients a lot that they are actually surprised by how much fun they have once they actually sit down and start looking at, what their dreams are for retirement and all the fun things and how they want their life to be from day to day. And they're so surprised and shocked that it's not all about the math.
I mean, the math is important. You got to deal with the math and you got to deal with reality. But I think it's playing life, leaning on your toes, and thinking about the future and making the most of the only life you have. So that makes me happy. And I think if you go through the exercises that we talked about today and what we're about to talk about in the Smart Sprint, I think you're going to be happier too.
On your marks, get set.
All right, we're off for a 7-day sprint to take a little baby step to creating a great life. So what I would like you to do is in 6 Shot Saturday, you're going to get a worksheet to help you dream up your ideal retirement. Why don't you sit down somewhere quiet with yourself or the two of you, depending on whether you're flying solo or not, and dreamscape, I don't know what they call it, dream about what you want your life to look like 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, and use some of the exercises that we talked about so you can start leaning forward so you can create the only life you want. So why don't you go do that in the next 7 days? Hey, so this was the first week of Retirement Plan Live Flying Solo with Sam. So one thing that you can do to help yourself, but help a lot of other people, is go to rogerwhitney.com and submit your thoughts about Sam's journey and your questions and your suggestions, because we're going to have an entire episode, assuming we get enough feedback, to crowdsource Sam's life in retirement. So I want to hear some of your perspectives, because I have no doubt that the unique perspective you have may be the key to not just helping Sam, but helping a lot of other people. So go to rogerwhitney.com, enter the conversation so we can crowdsource Sam's retirement and all work together to create the best life we can. All right, next week we are going into financial resources, and you can get all this stuff in 6 Shot Saturday. I am Roger Whitney, the Retirement Answer Man.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.